Different approaches to the idea of securitization. In the book titled Regions and Powers, The Structure of National Security by Buzan and Wæver, the authors explore the concept of securitization from the historical perspective, examining the domains of its structure according to various theoretical approaches such as regionalist, globalist, and neorealist. The latter perspective is state-centric and driven by the balance of power logic. In this understanding, the state's security concerns are closely related to the multipolarity or unipolarity of the power. The main concept and tendency of the globalist perspective, based on the idea of globalization, is the deterritorialization of world politics. This perspective contradicts the previous approach, as the neorealist point of view disagrees with the breach of strict separation of the states. The milder version of the globalist perspective involves the active participation of interstate agencies and organizations that facilitate connections and blur out the borders. Within this approach, the scholars focus on the relations between the center and the periphery, developed and developing countries, and their interactions as the exploiters and the exploited, or as more and less dominant forces in the global arena. Finally, the regionalist perspective is concentrated on specific areas of the world and the balance of powers there, instead of viewing states as global agents. According to this point of view, the polarity of the global powers has shifted since the end of the Cold War, and without any equal rivals, the powerful states are less likely to be interested in global domination and cross-regional alliances. Balzacq approaches the theory of securitization through the concept of desecuritization. The author points out that the meaning of securitization depends on whether the securitizing actors consider what they are doing is the response to a securitizing move. In other words, the forms of securitization may differ from a verbal intent to a plan, an action, or even an attack. The common characteristic of all of these actions is that they occur as the result of a perceived threat. Balzacq adds that depending on its forms, securitization may produce different impacts on the individuals and states around. Further, in his article Words, Images, Enemies, Securitization and International Politics, Williams explores the form of securitization that is known as a speech act. The author states that as a speech act, securitization has a specific structure which in practice limits the theoretically unlimited nature of security. In this case, the constraints involve the form in which the speech act is performed and the social and empirical environments in place at the time while the claim is made. That way, the speech acts can be subdivided into verbal statements. One of the actors makes a clear utterance of their perceptions of the threat and social positions. Without making a statement, an actor puts into practice a certain choice that communicates their securitization to the other actors. Taureck perceives the act of securitization using an environmental approach and taking into consideration the factors that preceded the act and impacted its form. According to the author, an actor who intends to securitize an issue is to go through 3 steps that are the identification of an existing threat, an action driven by emergency concerns, and the effect this action produces on the inter-unit relations. In other words, the author maintains that initially, an actor is to communicate the perceived threat as existential, make a securitization move, in order to persuade the audience that there is a need for the securitization mode, the creation and implementation of the rules and policies that result from the securitization. That way, an idea of a threat is constructed and presented socially and politically, without taking into consideration the threats and interests of the other sides involved. Finally, Stone outlines various areas in which securitization may occur. Apart from the military, the threats can also be political, regional and global rivalries, competition for influence and power, economic, financial crises and recessions, societal, ideology, culture, and ethnicity threats among others, and environmental, ecological hazards, the confrontation of humans and nature, the natural threats that are out of control. Securitization may appear at any of these levels or several levels at a time, making the process of handling it even more complicated as the challenges are multidimensional and the actors are multiple.